Hello, everybody, and happy Wednesday. It's Big Blue Kickoff Live presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. John Schmeelk, Paul Dottino with you. We'll take your calls at 201-939-4513. Well, given our conversation yesterday, Paul, it was only fitting that after we finished the program, reports came out, and according to reports, the Giants have agreed to terms pending a physical with quarterback Russell Wilson. The terms of the contract are not disclosed by the Giants. I'm sure you've seen what other people have put up online. A very reasonable deal that's incentive-laden, not surprising. So, Paul, Russell Wilson to the Giants. We can dig deep into Russell Wilson, the player, what this means for the Giants now in the draft. Your visceral reaction when I texted you last night this news. I've been only texting you bad news recently. I actually got to text you some good news for once.
That is true.
And your reaction when you saw the text from me that this was happening.
Well, something that I had said all along, once the Rams had decided to pull Stafford off the block, we were talking at the Combine, and immediately I said, it's got to be Russell Wilson, and I haven't wavered from that. I think that you're talking about guys like Rodgers and Wilson who had numbers and conditions and kinds of details about their next contract, and I think, as we've said many times on this program, John, it comes down to you need two people to make a deal. Just because a team may want somebody doesn't mean you're going to get them, because they will have conditions that they want on their side of the ledger, or their agent's going to want on their side of the ledger. This was a waiting game. This was a sweated out game. It was about Joe Schoen knew what he wanted, knew what his price point was going to be, knew what his conditions were going to be. And while we were all kind of impatient about that, at the same time, we knew that the music was going to stop and there was only going to be so many chairs left, and the opportunities for both Rodgers and Wilson were dwindling by the day. And with the strong sentiment that I had gotten a few weeks ago from my guy in Pittsburgh that the Steelers were all in on Rodgers, I always thought that this was going to be the best option for Wilson.
Yeah, me too. And when people have asked me, everyone likes to ask, well, who do you think the Giants quarterback is going to be week one? My answer has consistently been, I think it's going to be Russell Wilson. So, again, if this does come to pass, that looks like it's going to be the case. Let's talk about Russell Wilson first, then we'll talk about the impact on the draft, because there are multiple layers to this. But first, Russell Wilson, the player, Paul. I pulled some of the advanced stats today, just looking at stuff. So, Russell Wilson last year, 23rd in EPA per dropback, 22nd in QBR, quarterback rating 14th. So that's kind of some of the overarching quarterback numbers you have there. Mm-hmm. The QBR is a little bit lower because he doesn't run a ton anymore, and he takes a lot of sacks. That's what kind of dragged the QBR down. Same for the EPA per dropback. So, stuff that he's really good at, okay? He had 40 completions of 20 or more yards last year. He only did that in 11 games. Mm-hmm. Tied for 19th most in the NFL in 11 games. So if he goes the whole year, he's probably top 5 in that category in terms of passes over 20 yards. That's a very good number. 15th in air yards per attempt. 12th in yards per attempt. So he's the guy that throws the ball downfield a lot and is productive throwing the ball down the field. Stats in NFL Network pulled a couple of numbers here. On downfield passes in 2024, pass yards per attempt, 13.9 first. 11 touchdowns, 3 picks, 6th best ratio. 124 pass rating on downfield passes. These are all next-gen stats numbers. 124.4, second highest in the league. Completion percentage over expected, plus 11.6. So that's the good stuff, Paul, where he will throw the ball downfield. I was going through some of his plays. We're going to do like a little, if this thing goes down, we will do some kind of film room on him. And he, without a lot of space, gets the ball in stride on the outside shoulder, away from the defender. His accuracy on those sideline, outside the number, deep passes, 10, 15 plus yards down the field, is off the charts good. The touch, pace, location, it's very, very good. That, to me, is what you get out of Russell Wilson that's good. It raises the floor of the room. You're going to get competent quarterback play. Not everything's perfect, and we'll talk about that next. But you're going to get more explosive plays down the field. We talk about those contested catches from Malik Neighbors. Well, he's going to get a million of those opportunities with Russell Wilson down the sideline. And he's going to be able to take advantage of Darius Slayton's perimeter speed, Jalen Hyatt's perimeter speed. All that's going to work with Russell Wilson, and that's where his strength is, right? There's a lot of checkdowns, and there's a lot of deep passes outside the numbers. That's what you're getting with him.
I think I saw 3 of the Steelers games when he was a quarterback last year, including the one game when the Giants were in Pittsburgh, and they beat the Steelers beat the Giants in overtime. So what do you see? You see a guy who was not the same guy who was in Seattle when they went to the Super Bowl. But I talked to Max Starks last night. He's the Pittsburgh Steelers radio analyst who was in the NFL as an offensive lineman for over a decade. And I said, Max, I saw 3 games. That's not enough. Okay, you were there every week. Give me the best parts. And he said, it's very simple. The deep ball's incredible. It still is. The receivers will love him because he puts the ball where they can not only make the catch, but they can also get yak yardage. He will lead them. He will give them really good throws. The anticipation, it's going to be where they want the ball.
He is an accurate passer.
No
He's
question.
a very accurate passer.
And what does this go back to? One of John Schmeelk's favorite words. Explosives. Well, guess what? The Giants' yak yardage, which has been really, really rough, okay, really rough, is going to increase dramatically. Max said to me, there is no question he's got enough gas in his tank to at least be a 1-year starter. And there is no doubt he is going to raise the entire level of the wide receiver room because of his ability to hit guys where they want to be hit. And, as you said, that deep ball, the Giants are going to get that deep ball back into their playbook now because of Russell Wilson. The other huge factor that Max said, and you've already gone over the numbers, which we've gone over on this show before, he's not going to turn the ball over. The negative to that, though, and he only had 7 turnover-worthy plays last year at the quarterback position, which is extremely low. Now, Max did refer to the fact that you're going to have to get used to him being willing to take sacks. Now, that's something that Eli Manning did a lot of. There were times...
Not to this extent, though.
No. But there were times where Eli would live for another play and he'd be willing to eat the ball, go down, take the sack, not get hurt, fold up, rather than throw the ball and take a chance of a pick. Wilson believes in that.
And by the way, this is not just a recent phenomenon for him. Russell Wilson has never been sacked fewer than 33 times in a season.
Right.
His whole career.
And he's had some rough lines.
In fact,
too.
You go back to his best years in Seattle, 44, 42, 45, 41, 43, 51, 48, 47. And then his last year in Seattle, he was at 33, 55 his first year in Denver, 45 his second year in Denver, and then he had 33, and again, just 11 games. That's 3 sacks a game. That's kind of where he's been for between 2.5 and 3 sacks per game. And that goes back to his average time to throw. PFF had it at 2.83 seconds last year, which was 29th in the league. So he will hold the football.
Yeah, he's not afraid to do it because he thinks that's the less negative play. It's the least of the 2 evils. The other 2 things that were said to me is that you can use him on rollouts and move the pocket.
Yep.
He's not going to run the ball like Daniel Jones running RPOs anymore. That's not his game anymore. He's too old for that.
Read options are not happening.
Okay?
No.
And he's not going to look to scramble to get yardage. He's going to move horizontally just enough time to buy an extra second or 2 and get rid of the ball.
And he will throw the ball away once he rolls out of the pocket.
Absolutely. All right, so that's a positive because Dable does like his quarterbacks to be able to have some escapability. So that was something that Max Starks talked about. Then the other thing he said was he is not afraid, and he said, now sometimes people get frustrated by this. He understands that sometimes the safest play is the best play, and if it means you're in a pass play and it's breaking down, he is not at all afraid to take the quick check down.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, hey, you may not get the first down, but at least you'll avoid the negative play. You'll get the positive play, and you'll get some yardage. You may not get the first down, but you live for another day. And Wilson is not afraid to do that either.
Yeah.
So these are the things. And then the other thing he mentioned was leadership. He said he thought that last year with the Steelers, a lot of young players on the team, and his leadership skills did come through. His effort, his desire, his competitiveness were absolutely evident as he helped direct the Steelers to the playoffs.
Yeah, and again, I don't use the grades. He was 12th in PFF passing grade last year. That's another one of those overriding metrics people look at. And then the other thing I'll point out is access to the middle of the field. Because of his height, Paul, we've talked about this.
It's a problem.
He does not throw a ton to the middle of the field. So PFF does a good job putting these passing maps up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have it broken down into sections. So from 10 to 20 yards between the numbers, he only attempted 22 passes last year. Now, he completed 16 of them. 72% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, 366 yards. When he gets there, he's accurate. He can make those throws. He just doesn't access that middle intermediate level of the field much. But again, he's not a taller guy. He got big offensive linemen in front of him, seeing it, getting it over their heads over the middle of the field. We talked about this with some of the smaller quarterbacks sometimes. So that's one of the areas, too, where it's a lot of perimeter stuff.
Yeah, Max said the only time that you really design stuff over the middle of the field when he's throwing the ball is when you're down near the end zone. That's about the only time that you're going to do it. I think this reinforces the Giants' need to make sure the interior of the offensive line is fortified, because this is a guy who 100%. Does not like bugs in his windshield, okay? Max said that what they'll do is the only time you'll see him throw the ball over the middle of the field, usually in between the 20s, is when they're scheming it to where he's doing a rollout and now he's going to find an angle and he's going to throw it back into the middle of the field. Because otherwise, this is part of the hole. This is one of the holes in his game, and this is why when people say the guy's a scheme quarterback, there are certain things about him, especially that item that you've just brought up, John, that you have to be able to work around.
All right, now the last thing I'll bring up before we get to your calls, and we got to do the draft portion of this too real quickly. I know there's been, I don't know, it's factual. I'm not going to call it a narrative. It's factual. So he started 6-1 with the Steelers last year, but then finished the year losing 5 straight games.
Including the playoff game.
Including the playoff game, that's correct. So you overall finished 6-6, 6-5 in the regular season. But, and this is an important but, these are the teams he played in his final 5 games last year.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Thank you, Pearson. At Philadelphia, at Baltimore, home versus the Chiefs, home versus the Bengals. That was a disappointing loss, only 148 yards against a poor Bengals defense.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the playoffs, they lost at Baltimore. So I'm not going to kill a guy for losing at Baltimore twice, at Philadelphia, and home versus the Chiefs. That's why win-loss should not be a quarterback stat, because there's a lot going on there, and I've always talked about that, right? But the wins early in the year, again, not the best team, so it balances out, right? They did win at Washington, which is a very nice win.
Mm-hmm.
They beat both New York teams. Mm-hmm. They beat Baltimore at home. They won at Cincinnati in a 44-38 shootout, and then they won home against Cleveland. So those are the wins. And then he lost at Cleveland in the middle of that first 7-game section as well. So don't lose your mind when people say, oh, he fell apart. He finished 0-5 in his final 5 games. Again, at Philly, at Baltimore, home versus the Chiefs, home versus the Bengals, at Baltimore. Very, very tough schedule, which is going to be kind of like the schedule we used to face this year with the Giants, to be quite honest with you.
But now here is the other very critical factor when you're talking about a coaching staff and a playbook setting up a quarterback and an offense for success. Max said one of the great things that Russell Wilson really does well, and this goes back to his days in Seattle.
Play action?
Bingo.
Yeah,
That's it. He is a big-time play-action quarterback. He was for years in Seattle. He has continued to be, and that's part of the problem, because down the stretch at the end of last season, the Steelers' offensive line was struggling some, and the running game was sporadic, and they were not as effective as they needed to be in keeping defenses honest. So the one item that he said, hey, I'm sure the Giants are going to want to be as balanced as they can and make sure they get a lot of play action going, because that's something he does extremely well.
That's a good nugget. All right. Very quickly, and then we'll get to your calls. For me, this makes it slightly less mandatory to select a quarterback at 3rd overall. It does not change the way I look at drafting a quarterback, period. I still want a rookie quarterback in the building to develop. I was already leaning towards not picking 1 at 3, because I don't think the quarterback that would be there at 3 is going to be much different than the guy could get at 34, to be quite honest with you. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little bit better, but not, head and shoulders different. So to me, I am leaning well into the Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter at 3, and then probably at 34, to be quite honest with you, then you. I mean, I was already kind of here already anyway.
I know, but now you're leaning more.
But
that's good.
And I would then. I'm probably more vociferous than you are though about picking a quarterback at 34 because I'm not sure I can wait until 65.
I could see one in the second round. I'm probably more leaning toward third in that regard.
With everything going on, I have not done my. I was planning on finishing my quarterbacks this week. I had to watch yours, Milroe, and McCord. I have not watched them yet. I will still try to get to them by the end of the week. There's been a lot going on.
I am behind too, John.
And hopefully by then I'll give you the guys I'd be willing. But right now, would I take Jackson Dart or Tyler Shook at 34? I would.
I think that the one thing we will agree on is that the urgency of taking 1 and 3, which I've never been on anyway, I certainly think is much less right now. I just don't think there's any question about that. Ward is going to go to the Titans. I am convinced of that, which means at 3, you're either taking Shedeur Sanders or you're not taking a quarterback because there's nobody else in this class that anybody would consider taking in the top 3.
And I will say this, Paul, and I thought I might get here, and I think I have. Shedeur for me is closer. He's better than them, but he's closer to Dart and Shook than he is to Cam Ward for me.
I agree.
Which is why I think about it the way I do. Now, again,
agree.
This is me watching tape, folks, and I've said this a million times. So let me be clear about this. If he gets in with the coaches and they're like, wow, his ability to process is off the charts. Like, this is high-end mental stuff. That stuff that you only see from the best pros. And Brian Dable was around Tom Brady. He'll know what that looks like. And they're like,
you think?
The mental stuff here is so good that we have to get him in our building. And we think because of that he's going to be a great player. By all means, select him. And I would not be upset if they did. But I don't have that benefit of getting one-on-one meeting time with him and seeing how he watches tape, how he thinks about the game and recalls and things of that nature. So just wanted to be clear, as we talked about the quarterbacks here, just what you see on the film is only is a smaller part of the picture because there's only certain things you can know from watching them.
Yeah. We've often talked to the fans about how when we learn stuff at the Combine and then after the Combine, that it's not necessarily a revelation as much as it is we're now getting intel caught up to what the teams had already thought about, right? We've talked about that very fact. Well, it's overwhelming since Indianapolis. John and I were practically beaten over the head by everybody there. 95% of the people, maybe 98% of the people there. Cam Ward is clearly separated as the number 1 quarterback.
And it made me feel good because that's how I saw it watching them heading into the Combine. So I'm like, all right, maybe I actually know what I'm looking at a little bit.
I know, because, well, you see it. Look at the plays.
No,
look at the toolbox.
I know.
Okay? They're not close. They're just not. And for some reason, there are some people who still want to push Sanders up there. I think maybe it's because of...
Quarterbacks get pushed up.
Right.
Paul. It's just the way it is.
Right. But I think they're pushing him so high because they'd like to be right and they think that some team is going to take a gamble. I think that's what's happening with some of these mocks. That's why they call them mocks, right? So I'm with you on this 100%. I don't think Sanders should be that high at all. I'm not even sure that Ward should be the number 1 pick, but he's going to be. And so... that's where I stand. And yes, I'm with you. I could see a quarterback on the second day. I'm not so sure I would do it in the second round. I might wait till the third, but I could see one.
I'm just afraid of who's not going to be left anymore once you get to the third.
I know.
Maybe when I get through yours, McCord, and Milroe, and I like all of them, and I feel good about one of those guys being there in the third round, maybe I'll change my mind. But I'm not there. I haven't watched those guys yet to be confident in that.
I will tell you this. I'm not a Milroe guy.
Shocking.
It shouldn't surprise you because he's a legs guy.
It's the least surprising thing I've heard
Correct.
in my entire life.
He's a legs guy. I'm not a Milroe guy. I would definitely consider Dart, although his inconsistencies are a problem. And I think the inconsistencies are more mechanics related than anything else. I think he has the ability to make more consistent plays, but he kind of gets a little disjointed when he throws the ball sometimes. And it shows in some of the accuracy issues. But I do, at his core, I do like him. And, beyond that, I guess we talked about this too. Shuck got a lot of props from people who really know their stuff, not draft people now. We're talking football people. Shuck got a lot of plaudits.
Greg Cosell loved him. Louis Riddick, if you hear him on
Jim Miller.
ESPN, he loves him. Jim Miller loves him. Yeah.
And
his tape's good, Paul.
I know it is. I know it is.
Now remember though, it's only 1 year good tape though. That's the tricky thing, and he's 25.
And that's always, and I'm not even concerned about the injury thing as much as some people are. I'm not. I agree with him. I don't think he's injury prone. I think he had some tough luck. But there's no denying that at 25 years old, he hasn't had as many high-level college snaps as a guy should.
He's old, but he's not crazy experienced. It's a weird dynamic.
Kind of green on the experience, but old on the calendar.
Which is not what you're looking for.
Usually not.
Right.
So that gives me pause because you're right. You look at his frame. You look at his tools. We saw him at the podium. His demeanor. He looks like he's right out of a Hollywood set, like All-American quarterback. What was there not to like about him, John? Except that there are questions about his ability to produce when he moves up to this level because there's just not enough evidence.
Yeah, and consistency, right? Because we just haven't seen that throughout his college career.
So, but he would intrigue me. I somehow, I don't know what we're going to do because you can't give him any more snaps. And he's done.
And he ain't getting to you in round 3, dude. I'm just telling
probably
you.
not.
It's not happening.
Probably not. So, I'm telling you, plan C. Plan C. And I would not throw a tantrum if Plan C happens. Plan C is if no quarterback falls to where you are in any of the rounds, you simply don't take one. You just take the best player available and you deal with it next offseason.
Oh, God, no.
That's Plan C.
I'm out on that.
I'm not telling you it's my favorite plan.
Well, and by the way, I think you're dealing with the next season regardless. Because if you pick a guy in day 2, there's no guarantee that he's
going to
check in and be your guy next year.
That's absolutely true. I agree with that. So that's why I think Plan C is a plausible possibility. I'm not saying it's my favorite choice, but I think it's plausible.
Sure. A lot of things are plausible.
Yes, indeed.
Very unlikely. All right. 201-939-4513. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Randy in California. We lead off with him. Randy, what's going on?
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. How you guys doing today?
What's up?
It's a wonderful day being a Giants fan. We've been through this song and dance before, but you know what? My blood runs blue, and I still think we have a Super Bowl run every year. It don't matter.
I appreciate the optimism, Randy. What do you got today?
Well, I mean, hey, everybody's 0-0. Every team has a chance. It doesn't matter. That's why we play the game, right?
Of course.
So here's my thing. Forcing the pick at 3, I don't like a pocket quarterback like Sanders. So I think we need to finish out the roster and get better on the defense and the offensive line. And we got a bridge quarterback right now that could carry us through the season. And I think even taking a quarterback later in the rounds might be kind of pushing it, right? If he's not there, that's not the right guy for our offensive line because I don't want a pocket quarterback, right? I think our offensive line is better built for somebody who can scramble.
Now you do, Randy. You need someone. Here's the thing. I agree. You want someone that can move around, but eventually, whoever you draft is going to have to be a good pocket quarterback because that's how you win in the National Football League.
Right. But Daniel Jones' problem, he can scramble and move around a little bit, but the problem is he looked to run. And a lot of people like Allen, they look to scramble to throw.
That's true.
Right? So I'll let you guys go. But, like I said, I don't want Sanders because he's a good quarterback, but he takes a lot of hits. He stays in the pocket too long. That's why he gets hit so much, right? That just tells me he's not processing well. He's like another Daniel Jones. Anyway, I appreciate you guys. You have a good day, and I'll let somebody else jump on.
Thanks, Randy. Appreciate the call, man. All right, let's go to James in Georgia. He's up next. Hey, James.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for taking my call again this week.
What's up, man?
I just want to say the signing of Russell, like I called last time, it's a good signing. The 1-year deal shows that it's to me, that it's a prove-it deal, more than just 1 year and we're going to show you the door deal. I still would go Shedeur Sanders in the draft, though, and finish out the quarterback room. I think Russell Wilson, he's more of a mix of our Collins and our Warner. I know we talked before about what kind of a bridge are you looking for.
I would say more Warner.
The,
I would say more Warner than Collins, James. When Collins got here, he was, 31, Paul? Something like that?
Yeah, and Collins wasn't a bridge. Collins was here for a handful of years.
Yeah,
he was not a bridge.
Correct.
Warner?
Yeah, I would say Wilson is more in the Kurt Warner category in terms of age and stuff like that than than Kerry Collins.
And Warner wasn't even that old.
No, he was, 33?
Yeah, but he had come off a hand injury, a broken thumb, and basically he was out on the street. Nobody wanted him.
Right.
But, yeah, he was not 36.
That was what, 2005?
Eli, basically.
It was Eli's rookie year, 2004.
Okay, so he was 33.
Yeah. Lot younger than, 3.5 years younger, I guess, than what Wilson is.
Well, I think he's going to get the best out of the Neighbors and Tracy in Dayball's offense. That's what you're hoping for. Are y'all saying that he's not very good at seam passes to the tight end?
We didn't say that. We just said you have to be careful about over the middle. You kind of have to scheme throws over the middle when you're in the middle of the field.
Wilson?
Yeah, it's a height thing, and when people get pressure, especially in the interior of the pocket, he's not the tallest quarterback in the league. I mean, that's going to provide an issue for him.
That's why I think the seam passes. He's like say he had a lot of touch. He can still throw the seam, not probably like the 5 and 10 ends across the middle, but maybe the seam passes. We can put that back in our game. Did you see any back shoulder throws in this tape that he had with just got a couple more, and I'll let y'all go. What is the money for the first round quarterback taken in the top 10, just to see how much money we're investing in the quarterback room? And me, I don't know, personally, Giants fans or whatever, I'll leave you with this. I'm glad that we have a black quarterback starting day one in our quarterback room.
All right, awesome,
you
James.
gentlemen have a good day.
Appreciate the call. Oh.
He's not a specialist in the back shoulder throw. He's more going downfield. And
he does do it though. It was on there.
He can, but that's not his primary route. He's more interested in letting it go on those moon balls.
And just because we've gotten these calls before and we've tried to explain to you guys how ridiculous the concept is, the Giants have signed 2 quarterbacks. They are both African American.
That is true. And they have had others before.
201-939-4513. 201-939-4513. Jeff in Maine is up next. Hi, Jeff.
Oh, hey. Thanks for taking my call. I'm real excited about the Wilson signing and even more impressed by Joe Shane's negotiating skills. I would have caved a week ago and given Wilson anything he wanted, But I think overall Shane's done a great job in the free agency period. I give him an A. I think he's got great value across the board, and I think he's improved the team, during free agency. But there's one pick in particular I'd like to ask you about on defense. I think might be a little overshadowed or under the radar or whatnot. And about a month ago, Paul, you had said something about one of the problems in the run defense is trying to play edge rushers as defensive ends, and I think the signing of Golston could help that.
Exactly.
And I think he got good value on that pick, too.
Yes, it increases the versatility of the kind of formations that you're going to be able to use in your front seven.
Right, exactly. So anyway, I thought about that, and now, we have all these needs filled, not just one quarterback, but 2. And so now, of course, going into the draft, we can get best player available. And one other possibility that we could even consider is trading down to 5 with Jacksonville and drafting Mason Graham. And I'll take it off the air.
I don't think they're going to trade out of Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter.
I don't think so either. And in order to do that, it would take a Herculean kind of offer. And I don't see Jacksonville being able to come up with that. Why would they?
So with 3rd overall, and this is a question that James asked, James. The 3rd overall pick, cap number, according to Over the Cap, would be 6.9, so about $7 million. For your pick at 3rd overall, if you wanted to use that on a quarterback. If you wait to the 2nd round, you're looking at 1.9. So, and now keep in mind the money that's left over from Daniel Jones's contract plus Wilson plus Winston. Then if you use the third overall pick, then you're looking at a pretty big allocation for the room. Well, in general,
you kind of
at least for this year, but then that falls off a cliff next year because those guys are on. Except for if the reports are correct, Winston, which again is still that's not official yet. That's only according to reports, folks. That they've agreed to terms pending a physical.
Indeed.
So we'll have to wait next year to see where that next week to see where that goes. But next year a lot of those salaries could be gone in theory, and then all of a sudden the room is very cheap.
I will say this about the salary situation. I was kind of bleary-eyed, John, last night after the Knicks game and everything else and doing a program. But I did a quick check on the reported $21 million one-year offer or deal that supposedly Wilson is going to take. That would put him, I believe, 20th in average salary for quarterbacks of the NFL.
And that's only if he meets all his incentives.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. 20th.
And by the way, that's if Brock Purdy gets paid, that's going to drop to 21st.
Right. And to be honest, yes, Russell Wilson is in an advanced stage of his career, but I don't think I have a problem with that.
No, I think that's about where he is.
You could probably find him somewhere between 15 and 20 if you were to really sit down and try to rank starting quarterbacks in this league. I don't think it's outrageous. I don't think it's overly cheap. I don't think it's expensive. I think it's in the vicinity.
I think it's right in the ballpark.
It's in the vicinity.
Right. I'm with you.
Credit to Joe Shane, because both of these high profile free agent quarterbacks had different things in mind when they were shopping around for deals. And it was a matter of, and I certainly didn't think initially that Wilson, in fact, even as much as a week ago, I was like, I don't know that Wilson or Rodgers are going to take a one-year deal. I just don't know. I think it's probably going to take at least 2. I wasn't just sure about the numbers, but I was pretty sure that they weren't going to take one-year deals. I didn't think either one of these guys would. That was the whole question. That was the only doubt was what would the player accept? There was never an issue about that the Giants want the guy. That was obvious.
Yeah, I'm with you. 201-939-4513. 201-939-4513. Jason's in Virginia. He's up next. Hi, Jason. You guys have been doing a good job being quick today, by the way. Jason, what's going on?
No problem. I'll try to keep up the trend of being quick. 2 very quick questions. John, how many first-rate talents or first-round talents would you say are in this draft?
First round or like elite, like top 5 picks?
First rounder. How many guys would you say genuinely rank as a first-round talent in this draft?
Okay, let me look that up while you ask your second question.
All right. My second part, I just want to address to Paul, and I want to just have that number in mind for potentially what the answer is. Paul, I'm not saying you're wrong, and I'm not saying I disagree with you about maybe waiting until next year to draft a quarterback. But with signing Wilson, if we get those 7 to 9 wins that we hope he's going to deliver to us, that's going to put us in the middle of the pack probably in the draft order. Mm-hmm. To get a franchise quarterback next year, we're probably going to need some draft capital to go up and make sure we get who we want to get in that case.
Right.
I would say
I'll generate that draft capital. Are we trading 2027 stuff? Are we moving on from 3? If we're moving on from 3, how far back do we want to go? And I'll just take all the answers off the air. Thanks.
No, I appreciate the call, Jason. Good stuff. By the way, I'm probably all said and done. I'm going to have about 18-ish first-round grades.
Okay.
Maybe 17, something like that.
To answer your question, it's something we've been talking about on this program for months, and that's why one of the options for me was moving back from 3 to 6. Again, this was before the Raiders picked up Geno Smith. I was hoping I could get them to take a sucker deal, get a first-rounder and a second-rounder at least. I had this conversation with you, John.
Yeah, and I told you it was ridiculous.
And it's not going to happen.
Beginning.
Well, it's not going to happen. Now they got Geno Smith. It's not happening. But if you believed that they were going to be hot for Shedeur Sanders...
See, this is why you frustrate me.
You could have tried to get it.
You're like, I'll never trade a 1 to go from 3 to 1. But for a team to go to 7 to 3, you want a 1 and a 2?
Well, because it matters what side of the fence you're on.
Well, yeah, you want to rob the guy you're
Of course you
with,
do.
But that's not how the world works.
Well, you try. If you're the one
stupid.
If you're the one moving down, you want to rob them.
I understand.
If you're the one moving up, you don't want to get robbed, right?
That's fine.
It depends on your angle.
I understand.
So I'm with the caller in that I was hoping they could potentially gain some draft capital in 2026, and that could be used potentially to move up if you have to. So that was also part of the blueprint that I have diagrammed. I just don't know right now with the Giants where they are. I don't see them necessarily getting that kind of price to move down. So I think they'll just take the pick and get the best player available, which will be Hunter or Carter.
So the guys with straight up first round picks, and I guess there could be more by the time I get to the end of this. Cam Ward, Genty, Ted McMillan, the 2 tight ends, Warren and Loveland, Campbell, Membo, Banks. I have not done Connerly yet. I have not done who's the other late round offensive lineman? Zabel's not going to have a 1, I don't think. Defensively, Mason Graham, Abdul Carter, Jalen Walker. Michael Williams is borderline, but he's there. Mike Green, Travis Hunter, Jade Barron, Will Johnson. Those are my first round grades. So far, I've not done off-ball linebackers and safeties yet, so I'm leaving some space in there. And Derek Harmon, I've not gotten to either. He's on my list on my little board.
I don't think anybody would fight you really hard on any of those guys.
No, I don't think so either. And you know what? Like a couple guys I struggled with, and I might still make changes. Like the tight ends, I almost thought about putting them to the first/second round category. Like I have like Omarion Hampton in first, second round. I have Matthew Golden, Egbuka in like first, second round, kind of like that borderline area. James Pierce, Scourton. Those guys I have in first, second round. So the guys still might move around a little bit as I finalize these. But
I think ultimately, when we talk about this draft, and this was something we thought going into Indy, John, right? We thought going in, and we just got to confirm when we were out there. It depends on the position, but there's a lot of quality make-it players. There may not be superstars, but they're make-it players in this draft.
Oh, a ton.
There are so many second, third, and fourth round picks that are going to really do well in this league.
And probably since it's so deep, it might even go into the early fifth round this year.
Could happen at a couple of spots.
Yeah. I'm with you. 201-939-4513. Let's go to Andrew in North Carolina. He's up next. Hi, Andrew.
Hi. Hey, Paul.
Hello.
I heard you mention Shador may be there at 3, but I'm really having a hard time seeing Cleveland not going quarterback at 2.
No, you're right.
Like,
Andrew, they might very well pick Shador too. Absolutely.
Could happen. Absolutely could happen.
I just see nothing else. The tea leaves just all point to it. They have no money, and I believe that was one of the promises to Myles Garrett to keep him happy was, hey, we're going to get a quarterback so you can actually compete.
In fact, Andrew, if you made me guess right now, I agree with you. I would say if I had to put money down on a prediction right now, I would say I believe the Browns would take Shador.
Okay.
You know the beauty of that? If it happens and it goes Ward and Sanders, then anybody who wanted to debate the Giants taking a QB at 3 doesn't have to worry about that anymore. Because 1 and 2 will be gone, and now they're going to be forced to choose between Hunter and Carter.
That would still make our lives easier.
It would make everything rosy as heck.
I agree, and I fantasize of Neighbors and Hunter for the next 10 years if it does go that route. But I do want to know you guys' thoughts on Shador forcing his way to the Big Apple. And they talked about this being 21 years since the Eli Manning deal, and for the longest, there has been reporters and scouts connecting the Giants to Shador very heavy. And it could be all smokescreen, but, there was also a small report of Deion Sanders again saying, I want him in New York, or we're hoping for New York.
We saw that too.
Yeah, we did.
It wasn't confirmed. Yeah, it wasn't confirmed. But do you think Joe Shane knows there's a chance Shador would force his way to New York? And, how would that all plan out? Because he wore the cleats, and it is obvious, he wants to be here. And Deion said there's certain cities he doesn't want his son going to. And with all respect to Kevin Stefanski, a head coach of the year, Cleveland has to be one of those cities. They have a graveyard full of quarterback bodies.
They do. You're not wrong about that.
So how with that situation, that's the only way I see Cleveland not taking quarterback is if Shador, who does have the leverage, says, I just want New York at 3. How does that plan out? And then, I'm sorry to take up time. Second question with Travis Hunter. They say it depends on the team. Would Dayball use him primarily as a receiver, or primarily on defense, especially with the acquisitions we picked up on defense? I'm interested in that dynamic as well, too.
Good question, Andrew. Thank you, man. Thank you for the call. Good questions. How that would work, I imagine that either very quietly or very loudly, they would inform the Browns that Shedeur would rather not play for you. I was going to say I would think that would have happened already if it was going to, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. They might want to wait to see if they believe the Browns would really be interested. My gut feeling is that they're not going to do that either way, is that he's just going to go and play for who he wants to play for.
Probably.
I mean, the only way you can do that at 2 is if you have a promise shortly thereafter that he's getting picked by somebody. And draft promises can be sticky things. We've seen that before, where guys get promised and it doesn't come through. It happens in the NBA all the time. Happens in the NFL. So I would be very surprised if something like that happened. Right now, the Browns, look, the Deshaun Watson thing's bad. We know that. Not a bad roster.
No.
And Cleveland's, and I know, look, it's not very sunny in the wintertime. I understand that. The weather's not great. I understand that too. It's not a bad city. Cleveland is not a bad city. It's not. So, look, if I think they would pick them, I think that would probably be something that the agent would leak out to one of those insider types. And that's how it would get out there. And probably not until you get much closer to the draft would be my bet.
Now, I do think it's interesting, though, John, that as we have drawn closer and closer to the draft, we're not hearing any other teams connected to him, though. And sometimes you will hear more whispers, even if it's smoke.
I just think
you'll hear more whispers.
I just think that's one of those. All the focus is on the top 3 teams that all need one, and that's
and so everybody else forgets about the others.
I mean, we have had some. I've walked by the TV. Lord knows I don't watch these shows where ESPN has like the panel discussion about, oh, do you think he's going to slide? And then I've heard some conversation about, all right, well, if he gets past the top 3, what's next, right? And I think you're looking at the Jets at 6, right? The Raiders, I don't think they would pick a quarterback at 7 at this point with Geno there.
I don't think so either.
I think the Saints could use a quarterback at 9.
Yeah, because Carr's not going to be long for there.
No, just because of the financials part of it.
Yeah.
So I think those are 2 possible spots, and then you get the Steelers at 19, and that could be if he starts sliding, that could be a Steeler trade-up situation too. So those are the spots I would look at. You know, you said he wants to come to New York. Well, there's another New York team picking in the top 10 too, who has a quarterback under a 2-year contract.
You know,
so I think those are all possibilities, in my opinion.
I wonder if the Jets really thought they had a real chance at getting him. If they really want him, let's say he's high on their priority list, would they have done the deal with Fields even though he was not very expensive? Do you think they would have?
I think it's the same situation the Giants were in. You don't know who's going to be there, so you have to.
Okay, but my question
is, they knew they were getting him.
I'm not saying if they knew they were getting him. If they felt confident that he was a priority, right?
Let me put it this way: if they were picking 2nd overall, would they have still signed Justin Fields?
Probably not. See, what I'm getting at is that we talked about the tiers, the free agent quarterbacks. To some people, Fields was on a relatively high tier because he was young and still had a lot of potential.
Sure.
Right? So he was on a little bit of a higher tier than maybe some of these other guys who were considered backups.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying if they really thought that maybe they were going to have a legitimate shot at getting Sanders, would they have been more likely to go after a notch below tier quarterback instead of going for Fields? You could have made a case for that.
Yeah, I don't know what they feel about him as an immediate starter. Maybe Aaron Glenn believes it's better to sit a quarterback for half a year. In which case, they probably still would have brought in a Justin Fields.
If that's the case, yes. I don't know.
There's no way to know it's a brand new organization. They got all new people.
Exactly.
I don't know what their philosophy is.
None of us do.
So I don't have a.
I'm just throwing that out as a possibility.
It's a good point.
Would it have altered their tier when they shopped?
All right, so we're gonna do another 15 minutes on the phones here, guys, and then we had pre-booked before the Wilson stuff happened last night. The great reporter for the Georgia Bulldogs, Radi Nabulsi, who's been with us a couple years already, and we're going to do the Georgia Pro Day stuff, but I wanted to give you a full hour on Russ, so we're giving you bonus content at 1:30. We're going to have Roddy on for about 15 minutes, and then we'll do Georgia at the end of this, but we'll do 15 minutes on your calls on the quarterback situation in the meantime. Let's go to Dennis in Rutherford. He's up next. Hi, Dennis.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
We're good, man.
Hey, big fan. I'm looking at those two quarterbacks that we picked up, Russell and Winston, as good role models for. And I know it sounds crazy, but when you're a number one draft pick and you don't make it, and you can really tutor a kid that will think that, like, you're going up and you're going through college and you have so many people kissing your butt. And now, if you don't make it, how destroyed you are. I think that Winston can really talk about that, and
Yeah,
I think that
good point.
Russell can really talk about the highs of going all the way to the Super Bowl and winning one, and still keeping a level head, or going the wrong way, and how fast you can collapse.
Well,
In
Dennis,
New
how about
York,
this?
You can really shine. If you do well, you can do great.
And how about this
And,
too, Dennis?
take
Russell.
the rest off mine.
No, I appreciate it, Dennis. Thank you for the call. I was just going to add, but I think you made a good point. I think those two guys can provide really good advice and experience. How about Russell Wilson? How he earned his way onto the field as a starter, as a third-round pick, the same year the team that drafted him paid big money for Matt Flynn in free agency.
He sure did.
How does a rookie quickly get up to speed and become good right away? That's a great guy to have in the room to help a rookie quarterback with that stuff.
Yeah, again, when I talked to Max Starks, he said he saw a lot of leadership out of Wilson last year with a Steelers team that had a lot of guys looking to grow. He said that will not be an issue in the locker room. Wilson will take care of that. He will get into that role and fit it well.
By the way, and I'll say this too, I can't share exactly what he told me because it was an off-the-record conversation, but I did run into Davis Webb at the Shrine Bowl last year, so that was 2024.
Oh, my man.
And that was the year after he coached Russell Wilson in Denver.
Yes.
Had nothing but good things to say about him as a dude. And a guy in the locker room and a guy in the meeting room. He said he was fantastic. Fantastic.
And you know enough to know that Davis Webb, who came from a family where his dad was a coach, has great respect for guys who are professionals.
Yeah, and he would not, and I think he would have been.
He would have told you.
He would have been honest with me.
Sure,
if that was
because at that point you didn't know he was coming here, so he had nothing to lose.
Well,
by
right.
telling
I mean, yeah, at that point last year, the whole him visiting here as a free agent, none of that was even out there yet. So, I just to give you an idea, the guy that was in them as the quarterbacks coach in the room with him loved him to death. Had nothing but good things to say about him. So, take that for what you want. And we know that year didn't go well for him in Denver, too.
No.
So he said despite all the noise, all the stuff, waste of money, pressure outside, people killing him on the outside, he said he never, flinched. Was never a different guy, maintained his professionalism, was a really good dude.
Well, think about this. He injures his leg doing a drill at the beginning of last season, and Fields has to start the season as the starter in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
You never heard a peep out of Russell Wilson.
Never did. Well, then again, they did give him the starting job right away as soon as he was healthy, so what was he going to peep about? But yes,
but
I get your point.
All
right, let's go to Eric in upstate New York. He's up next. Eric.
Hi, how's it going?
We're good.
Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling, Eric. What do you got?
No problem. So I wanted to just talk about the Russell Wilson signing. I have an opinion about that, and I want to see what you guys thought. And I have one question after that.
What do you got?
So it seems like the timing of this is just really funny to me, or not funny, but, we hear about Cam Ward's pro day and how he just looked phenomenal, and it sounds like Tennessee is just in love with him. So, and then on the heels of that, same day, well, maybe a day later, we get the Giants signing Russell Wilson. So it seems to me that I think up until this point, we have been feeling like we were in it to possibly trade up to number one. But then after his pro day, I think Tennessee showed their hand that they weren't going to pass.
Yeah, and Eric, and I think the other half of this, it only came a couple days after Aaron Rodgers visited the Steelers. So maybe Russell Wilson got a hint from the Steelers that ain't happening. So maybe that the combination of both those factors is potentially what helped this thing come together.
Certainly a possibility. I do tend to think that it was more about the players having to understand what the market was, but I agree that could have been a combo situation.
Yeah. And then about Tyler Shook, was his pro day the other day? And I just want to know if you guys heard anything about that.
It was yesterday, and I am on the hunt. If someone out there has the video of the Tyler Shook pro day at Louisville, please tweet it to me.
Yeah.
I was trying to find it this morning, and I could not.
I did not. I looked. I was very curious.
And I even looked on cable to see if it was on the ACC network or something like that. It wasn't on that. So if someone out there, one of our great listeners that knows how to find stuff on the web, if you could find Tyler Shook's throwing session at the pro day yesterday, please send it along. I'd love to watch it.
Maybe there's a local television station there who at least got a chunk of video footage.
They had interviews on YouTube. I couldn't find.
Yeah,
anything
but
else
there was no
besides
video of the throws. I was really curious too.
Nah, good point, Eric. Appreciate the call, man. And by the way,
Yep.
I forgot the other caller had a second question for us that we didn't answer. Travis Hunter here would be a wide receiver or corner. We never answered that question.
I thought we've said that multiple times in the program that he'd be more of a defensive back.
Well, that's how we see him, but Brian Dable's an offensive guy.
Yeah, and as I think I've explained
that was
on the show,
and that was before they signed Paulson Adebo too, and re-signed Darius Slayton for that matter.
Yeah, again, I think you set him up to be more of a DB, have him compete with Banks. If he pushes Banks to get better, wonderful. If he beats out Banks, that's okay too. At the same time, you give him a small package on offense, and if that's where he winds up starting to get his most impactful plays early, it's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's okay.
Let's go to Marty and Manahawk, and he's up next. And Pearson, you try to get Radi up here, okay? Maybe we'll get him a little early. What's up, Marty?
Hey, John. Hey, Paul.
What's up?
Hey, I'm just curious, a couple of questions. Do you think we're done with free agency? And
Yes.
also, if not, what do you think we might target the rest of the way? And I'll take your answer off the air.
Thanks, Marty. I think they're done. If you want to take one more, Pearson, you can. We got time. I think they are done in free agency. I think now this is wait until after the draft, see what you draft. You get past the comp pick. Not that it matters. The Giants haven't lost enough guys to even be in that comp pick formula anyway.
No.
But you get past the draft, see if you have any holes. Then you go into that, who's left, get them on the cheap. The kind of like the Greg Van Roten signing from last year. You bring in some guy for not a lot of money. That, I think, is the next stop here in the process.
I would expect that they might add a veteran defensive back. Perhaps,
Another one, huh?
Perhaps
corner or safety?
Perhaps a corner, but it could be a safety. Maybe it's a swing guy, even. But I think it's a cheaper, low-cost veteran who they just want to be able to bring into training camp and see if he can add something to the back end of the depth chart. I don't think they're going to be making any more large purchases at all. They probably don't even have enough money. We don't know what their number is now after this proposed deal with Wilson goes through. But I'm with John on this. I do think they are done. They made a couple of signings in the last week, small ones, that I was even surprised about. I was like, I know they got the quarterback thing, but I think they're probably pretty much done. And then they snuck in a couple little ticket items.
They did. You're right, guys. Guys to compete on the back end of the depth chart, special teams guys, players like that. All right, final call on Wilson, and then we're going to get Radi Nabulsi up from the University of Georgia, talk about their prospects and their pro day. Scott is in New Mexico. What's up, Scotty? Long time no speak, man.
Yeah, hi. How are you guys doing?
We're good.
Question, and I'll make it brief. I like all the moves the Giants made. Russell Wilson is not as mobile as he used to be.
Nope.
But I think he'll get by. My biggest concern right now is the offensive line, especially whether Andrew Thomas is going to be ready for the beginning of the season. As I'm looking at the offensive line, I still have some questions because it doesn't matter who's quarterbacking if you can't protect them. So as you see it right now, where or what do you think the Giants need to do in the draft? Do they take somebody in the second round? Is there a possibility of trading down if Travis Hunter for some reason is going? Because obviously if he's there, they're going to take him. But my concern is whoever is the quarterback, if you can't protect them, it doesn't really make any difference. So you feel comfortable with the offensive line that you see now, or are the Giants going to have to draft somebody to potentially replace Andrew Thomas if he's not ready for the season? And then obviously when he gets ready, they'll put him back in. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that, and I'll take it off the air.
No, thank you, Scott. I think Andrew Thomas is supposed to be ready by the start of the year, even at the start of camp, maybe even in the spring. So I think he's going to be fine. Don't worry about that. I wouldn't mind adding a day two guard. Now, this is me now saying I think 4 different types of players I want to add on day 2. Well, they only have 3 day 2 picks. So you're gonna have to pick and choose. But luckily, they have a pick at the top of the 4th round in the deep draft class, Paul. So
it's 99 and 105, right?
I'm the first person to say you draft players, not positions.
Correct.
And so, but in my ideal world, but again, you draft players, not positions. It might not work out this way. These players might not be available at these positions. So I'm not going to give you an order. I'm just going to give you the positions I'd like to secure with those, top 5 picks. Okay? If you get Abdul Carter with your first pick, Paul, you don't have to draft another defensive end, right? So you get
correct.
If you draft Carter first, bring in a defensive tackle, bring in a guard, bring in a quarterback, and then whatever your other best guy is with the other one. If it's Travis Hunter, I would say end, tackle, quarterback, guard. That would be my 5 positions I'd like to find. But again, sometimes you can't based on how the thing goes.
Would Wilson or Rutledge as an interior offensive lineman kind of tickle your fancy in the 3rd round?
I'm looking forward to finding out about that. So why don't we ask our next guest? He is Radi Nabulsi. He is the publisher at UGAsports.com. Roddy, what's going on, man? Long time no speak.
I haven't been able to talk to you guys too much. I mean, you only got one Georgia Bulldog up there, so, I have to cut you guys off.
We used to collect them. A few years ago, we had a bunch.
I know.
But
you see how it worked out for Philadelphia. You get a bunch of Georgia players, and all of a sudden you end up championships.
Yeah, and they just stole another one this offseason in Azeez Ojulari, too. So they keep gathering them. And again, getting a bunch of Georgia players, Roddy, is not a bad plan because, once again, a lot of really good players coming out. So why don't we start on the offensive line? Because Paul just brought those guys up. You look at Tate Ratledge and you think, stash, kind of mullety. You figure this big bruising guard. Then he shows up at the combine and his workout was great. Tell us about Tate Ratledge and then Jared Wilson as well, who also had a great combine workout, by the way. The 2 interior offensive linemen coming out for the Bulldogs.
I think go back to Tate Ratledge's first year. He comes to Georgia as a freshman. He is actually supposed to start the Georgia-Clemson game back when they played it in North Carolina. This is a kid who, even when you had Broderick Jones, Andrew Thomas, all these guys who went on to the NFL, Jamari Sawyer, Trey Hill, he made it as a true freshman in the interior of Georgia's line. But then he got hurt and missed the season. So he's a 4-year starter.
So Roddy, I just want to be clear. He was going to start as a true freshman if he didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, he did technically start, but he got hurt pretty early in that game.
Right.
So I can count on one hand the number of true freshmen I've ever seen start at the offensive line at Georgia or heck any really top SEC team. So he's a bad man. He's country and he's funny, but he's dangerous. And he's a little nasty, but
yes, he's very nasty.
Yeah, very smart guy. And don't mess with his hair, but he's really good. And I think he's going to be a fantastic center guard. He can play either one. He's cross-trained. So he's just – I can't say enough about Tate Ratledge. Now, Jared Wilson, I'm very mad at for going pro. I wanted to cover him another year. We only got to see him play 1 year at the University of Georgia. He is the fastest offensive lineman ever to come out of the program. I've been covering this team for 33 years. I've never seen an offensive lineman who could run that fast. Last year, Kirby Smart said he was running with the DBs. Now, I think that was a bit of hyperbole, but he did set records for how fast he is. So he's probably going to be the number 1 center taken. He only played 1 year, and he actually missed a few games this year because he got injured. But he showed enough on tape, going up against all those great defensive linemen Georgia has in the NFL that he's like, look at my practice tape. I've gone against, the best in the league. I'm ready to go. And if you need a guy who can pull, you need a guy who can run, a guy who can get to the second level, that's Jared Wilson. So both of those guys are surefire winners.
Well, I think what's interesting, we talk about that program, and you get a lot of plug-and-play players coming out of Georgia, obviously. I get that. And the reputation is awesome. But how close do you think these guys are plug-and-play? Because they're not first-round picks. I mean, I don't want to overplay it. These guys are legitimate, hardcore, blood and guts, blue-collar football players who I think coaches are going to like to have around, but they're not going to get drafted in the first round, probably not even the second round. So
Ratledge might go in round 2.
You think he goes 2?
He has a chance.
I was thinking 3rd. But anyway, the point being, what is the big step that these two guys are going to have to make to get pro coaches to salivate?
Well, the step they need to make is just to be healthy. That's the number one thing. And I'm not trying to be flippant, but I've spoken to scouts and coaches, and I asked specifically about Jared Wilson, why in the heck is he leaving you after only 1 year of tape? And they said the NFL needs linemen. No one has enough
That's
linemen.
true. You're right.
No one's healthy enough. You've seen the dip in quarterbacks. A lot of very mediocre quarterbacks are out there. There's only 32 of them, 32 starting quarterbacks. But you have some very mediocre ones because there's just not that many good ones. So same when you got to have, carry 10 offensive linemen, you got to have at least a 2 deep, if not more. You've got to have some guys that can go. And so if they are healthy with Jared Wilson's speed and Tate Ratledge proving, on day one that he could play against the best, they're going to be quick takes. You're definitely going to jump on those guys. And so I'm not trying to say, hey, being healthy, I'm not trying to be cliche. I'm just saying they know that's what Georgia is plug and play because they run a pro style offense.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't all RPOs like everybody else does.
Right.
Kirby runs a pro style. These guys know pass protection. They know calls. They know twists. They know stunts. They know how to pick them up. So you're not going to trick these guys. They've seen everything, and they've practiced against very high caliber. They will say this every time. Their practices are the hardest thing they do. Playing games is usually a lot easier because you're never playing a team as good as what you see across the way from you every day in practice.
We've heard that from Alabama guys, too.
Now,
they
Roddy,
say the same thing about Saban.
Yeah, Roddy, since we're on the offensive line real quick before we get on to the defense, I didn't mention Dylan Fairchild, another one of the guards you guys have coming out. Would you consider him a tier below the other two, or is he right with them?
No, he's definitely a tier below this two, but definitely a guy who can make it. He's a state wrestling champion. I don't think he ever lost a match. So he's going to get right in there, move guys around. But he's not quite on their level. I'd say, fourth, fifth round guy, sixth or seventh. But he's a journeyman. He'll play in the league for like 7 years. And then there's Xavier Truss, who's played a lot of games for Georgia, has got the size. He'll get drafted as well, but I just don't see him having the same career as his other guys.
I have mentioned Michael Williams as a guy who really interests me up front for the Giants. I've mentioned him to John on a number of occasions. I'm curious because his power quotient, I think he needs to be stronger. I love his measurables. I love his length. I think he's going to have versatility on the line at the pro level, but I need to see him get stronger. How quickly can he do that? Does he show an inclination that he's going to be more of a power player when he gets up here?
He will once he gets to the league, and I'm not trying to crap on the guy, but it's just a situation where I don't think he was all that challenged in college. I think he's had his eyes on the league for so long, and that's been his goal. He's been able to win based on his speed, his versatility, lining up, his hip flip, when he clubs these guys and then jumps around them. He's not had to go up against guys that are that strong like you see in the league day in and day out. Sure, he's faced some great offensive tackles in the SEC, but, day in and day out, 3 downs per series. I see this happen a lot of times. Guys think they're strong. Then they get to the league and they find out they are not strong. And then you look at them in year 2 and year 3, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, he's really yoked out. Look at this guy. He's strapped now. Yeah, because it's a harsh reality, and he will realize that once he gets there. But, he definitely has the capability of putting it on. And you're right, the versatility, the speed, the moves, he's got a bunch of them. This is a guy you can send after the quarterback. He can set the edge. He can stop the run. He's an extreme talent. There's a reason he's a first-round pick. He's a winner.
Yeah, I wasn't blown away by his tape this year, Roddy, but I know he had a lot of issues with an injury this year that he kind of played through, right?
He said he only played. He said at best he's about 60% all year.
It was a high ankle. Is that what it was?
But he's had some shoulder issues, but mainly the ankle and stuff like that. It's just they were a beat up team, and he was one of the ones. He was just trying to get it through because he knew this was a contract year, so he's trying to be on the field as much as possible. I think if he maybe just stayed off it a little bit more and then came back and just had a couple big games, he'd move up even higher than maybe 13th or 14th.
Be careful how you use the term contract year because NILs are now in play.
Every year is a contract year in college football these days, man. You know that.
Yeah.
His teammate, Jalen Walker, a guy that a lot of NFL teams think is going to be an edge player. He only played a 240 for you guys last year. Did a lot of off-ball stuff, Roddy. For what you've seen from him, where do you think he's going to be most effective in the pros? Is it as a straight-up edge pass rusher, or do you think a team would be foolish to take him out of some of the things he did in space so well for Georgia last year?
We had 2 years of wondering where in the world is Jalen Walker. Now, when he committed to Georgia, I was up in North Carolina, drove up to see him. That interview that I did with him is still talked about on my website at UGAsports.com. They're like, this is a high school kid? I'm like, yes. The son of a coach. He'll be president someday. We'll all be working for him. Jalen Walker is off the field. He's an absolute superstar. On the field, though, we're like, when's he going to get his chance? And, of course, he's behind Nolan Smith and Aziz Ojulari, all these really talented guys. is he inside, outside? And we asked him before the season started, are you an inside linebacker? Are you an outside? Are you off ball, on ball? What do you want? He says, I'm a hybrid. And the Georgia coaches came out and said, look, we had to get comfortable being uncomfortable coaching him. We had to change our defense to use his talent. So you find somebody who can use him on ball, off ball, edge, inside, whatever. I'm not saying you change the defense around him, but you have to have a defensive coordinator with a little bit of imagination to take advantage of all of his talents. Do not typecast him. He's not worth taking away his other talents, because you can do so much. I go back to James Cook. Every time James Cook was on the field, nobody knew if Georgia was going to throw the ball or run the ball. They had no clue. It was just it was up in the air. You can do the exact same thing with Jalen Walker. Your offense looks at him and they're trying to read him, and good luck reading him, because he can do so many different things. He can make your day a living nightmare.
Malachi Starks, one of the better safeties in this draft. It is not a great safety draft per se, but certainly he is one of the guys who is going to get the most attention. And after his 4.5 in the 40, I think a lot of people might be a little happier taking him than maybe they would have been before.
Yeah, I mean, he can play star. He can be your nickel guy. He can play safety, pretty strong, however you want to use him. Georgia used him this year a lot in the star position because they needed him. They were thin there. A bunch of the guys that they had 3 different defensive backs drafted last year. They all went and played this year. They were actually all starters. So talk about plug and play. You had 3 rookie guys who actually left Georgia secondary and started for their team. So he's going to be the 4th one out of that group. Wherever he goes, he will start, because this is a kid in high school. He was a quarterback. He was the best player on the team offensively or defensively. He knows what quarterbacks are going to do. Again, true freshman, he went out against Oregon in Dan Lanning's first year and picked off a ball on a go route. I'm like, what's he doing over there? So it was a crazy one-handed catch, and it's only been plays like that for the rest of his career. He's played himself into the top safety in the draft simply because he makes crazy plays and he's so versatile and fast, and he can stop the run. So I can't say enough about him. I've been covering him since he was in 7th grade. He's going to be a superstar.
All right, I want to go to the defensive lineman real quick here, okay? Because I think there are 3 guys with very different skill sets and sizes. Nazir Stackhouse, kind of your big man. Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins is kind of a hybrid inside-outside guy. And then I think Warren Brinson, I was really impressed with him at the Shrine Bowl watching him, Roddy. Real good athleticism at 6'4", 310. How are those 3 guys different, and anything notable about them that fans should know?
Oh, Warren Brinson, Georgia was overjoyed when he came back for his last year because they thought he was going off to the NFL. They thought he was going to be a high-round draft pick. Very cerebral, very great with his hands, great hand fighting, interior guy who can move outside. Love Warren Brinson. Stackhouse, to me, is the best of all of them. Stackhouse is he's incredibly funny if you want to get into personality, but I think he has the mindset for the NFL, for the bright lights.
Roddy, real quick. I had a chance to talk to Stackhouse at the Shrine Bowl. I asked him one question. He answered with a 5.5-minute answer. I swear to you.
So, again, when you say what's different about him, the other 2 are not like that.
No, they're not.
You're not. You're not going to get 5 minutes out of Warren Brinson. And Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, I'm so happy for that kid because he came in his first year. He wanted to transfer. He wasn't getting enough playing time. He was very immature. And later on, he said, look, I grew up. And now he has grown into a professional. He may have the largest ceiling of all of them. He's not there yet. But Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, that is a kid who was petulant when he got here because he thought he'd come in 5-star, all the accolades. Then you realize you're not that good compared to everybody else. And instead of letting it defeat him, he buckled down, grew up, matured, and now is kicking people's butt. So very happy for TID.
I know John said he talked to Stackhouse. I did not go to the Senior Bowl, but at the Combine, I was really looking forward to him having a better Combine than he did because I was excited about what I had seen, some of the stuff on tape, but there were times where he seemed a little slow. I don't want to say lazy, but I was really kind of hoping for more. And I mentioned him to a couple of people at the Combine, and they weren't that high on him. They thought that maybe, there should have been more there, that he didn't reach his potential. Did you get the opinion that maybe he didn't push himself hard enough?
I can't really mind read of some of these kids. I mean, the ones I talk to the most, you kind of get a feeling, when they open up and talk about it. But with him, I just think it's a situation where when you have that much film against those types of players, sometimes it's easy to kind of go through the motions, and sometimes you can be very easily distracted. Again, I'm not saying this is the case on him at all, but I can see why some people say, well, I want to see more from him, especially after you're used to seeing Jalen Walker, Jordan Davis, Devontae
There
Wyatt.
is a lineage there.
You kind of get used to stuff like that, and you're like, well, why is he not Devontae Wyatt? Well, that's two different guys, so maybe that's it.
Okay. All right, Roddy, I got two guys on offense I want to hit before we say goodbye here, and then maybe Paul has one more for you. Trevor Etienne, the running back, transfer from Florida. I loved him at Florida. I don't know. I just felt like he didn't quite as much juice this year for Georgia as I thought he would. I'd like to get your take on what you saw for him in his 1 year with the Bulldogs. And then I have not watched him yet, but people have told me the tight end Ben Urosek was some super duper prospect and that just didn't work out. He had a lot of injuries. Give me the lowdown on Urosek because I don't know a ton about him. And then just your take on what Etienne showed you as a running back, as someone that's been around some great ones over the years.
Ben Urosek didn't do a whole lot for me. I thought Georgia had better tight ends. I mean, he did what he was supposed to, but there were just way too many execution issues. There were too many times he dropped a pass or missed a block. And I'm used to Brock Bowers. I'm used to Darnell Washington. I'm used to guys like that. So, and then Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky. You'll be talking about those two guys here in a few years, or maybe next year. So Ben was just not exactly what I was. I mean, he came in from Stanford and was like, "This is the smartest guy out there." And yeah, he's smart, but he missed a few blocks, and that it really hurt Georgia in a couple plays. But Etienne, he was better than anybody Georgia had. Georgia brought in 2 5-star running backs and had a couple others on staff. There were too many missed blocks. He's incredibly fast. He has that acceleration on the backfield that you like. He's his brother's, he's his brother in just a different package. So he's also very strong. I thought he tested well. Didn't quite have the year he wanted, but then Georgia's run game was 102nd in the nation. So I wouldn't put that all on Trevor Etienne. There were some missed edge blocks, missed perimeter blocks, missed assignments that really they did him no favors.
Dominic Lovett at wide receiver ran in the 4.4s at the Combine, but showed some inconsistency during his time with Georgia. What do you think his ceiling might be?
That is a guy who could play for 3 to 10 years in the league. Would not shock me at all. He's got the speed. He has the hands. The inconsistency was his final year. Remember, he was a leading receiver. He was better than Luther Burden in Luther Burden's first year at Missouri. Then he transfers to Georgia and is doing really well until his final year. And again, it's not technically a contract year. You guys point that out. He was well paid in NIL. But there was a series of drops all across the Georgia. I mean, Dylan Bell had him. Everybody had him. It was Georgia led the nation in drops. It wasn't just him. It seemed to be contagious. But prior to that, he was incredibly consistent. He won 50-50 balls. He knows his routes. They're crisp. They're clean. He's a great blocker, a great teammate. And I think that Dominic Lovett will be he'll be a guy that we're talking about, year 3, 4, 5. In other words, we'll be talking about his second contract.
Anyone we missed, Roddy, that you really like coming out of Georgia? I always like to ask for your little pet guys that you love a lot that you really think people are underestimating coming out of that Georgia program.
There are good big guys coming next year that you got to pay attention to. There's a lot of them. I definitely will keep an eye on Monroe Freely and Ernest Green. Talk about offensive linemen. I love my big hogs, and those are two that you need to keep an eye on. Freely and Green.
Roddy, good stuff. Tell the folks where to find all your great content.
Check out ugasports.com.
My man, Radi Nabulsi. Thank you, buddy. Talk to you next year.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Does a great job covering the Georgia Bulldogs. For Paul Dottino, I'm John Schmeelk. That's Big Blue Kickoff Live presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle to Giants. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.